I want you to picture a scenario that I think every single person listening to this has experienced, probably in the last month or so.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
You know exactly where this is going. It is 2 a.m. The office or your home office is pitch dark.
Yeah.
There's just that harsh blue glow of the monitor.
The classic developer witching hour.
Right. You have been fighting this nightmare race condition in your back end for 3 days. You are questioning your career. You're questioning your life choices, maybe even your sanity a little bit.
We have all been there. It is humbling.
It is. And you finally cave. You copy the entire stack trace, and you just paste the logs into your agent.
The absolute moment of surrender.
Exactly. But then something impossible happens, or at least it would have felt impossible a year ago. The agent doesn't just give you a polite suggestion. It steps in.
It takes the wheel.
It takes the wheel. It scans the code. It jumps across 3 completely different files. So it looks at your controller, your service layer, and a utility file you totally forgot even existed.
Always the utility file.
Right. It identifies the deadlock. It actually writes a test case to reproduce it. It fixes the logic. It runs your test suite to make sure it passes. And then just to be cheeky, it adds a comment on your pull request saying something like, fix the race condition, and also I renamed temp variable 2 to transaction mutex because we aren't savages.
Which is honestly the kind of code review feedback you'd get from a very snarky senior dev.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like pure science fiction if you pitch this to someone in early 2024. But as we sit here today in February 2026, this is just Tuesday afternoon.
It really is. The shift has been so visceral, we are not talking about smart autocomplete anymore. We have moved completely past that.
Right. That's the key.
Yeah, if you look back at where we were in 2024 or even 2025, we were thrilled if the AI could accurately finish a boilerplate function for us. Now we are dealing with fully autonomous agents. The deeper we get into 2026, the clearer it becomes that the role of the developer has fundamentally changed.
Changed how exactly? From writer to what?
From writer to architect and reviewer. You are no longer laying the bricks, you are reviewing the blueprints and inspecting the final house.
So today we are doing a proper deep dive into the state of AI coding agents. Right now in early 2026, we have gathered the latest benchmark data, we have user reports from the trenches, and we're going to look at these pricing tiers that are honestly making everyone's eyes water a bit.
They are definitely steep.
Yeah, they are. So the goal for this deep dive is simple. With so many tools absolutely flooding the market right now, which one actually makes you productive, and which one is just a very flashy way to burn your API credits?
It really is the most expensive question in software development right now, and the adoption data we are seeing is just wild. JetBrains and a few other industry watchers just dropped their early 2026 reports, and daily AI usage among professional developers is sitting at over 93%.
93%. I mean, that is essentially total market saturation.
It is.
If you aren't using these tools right now, you're basically bringing a slide rule to a calculus exam.
Precisely. You are competing against people who essentially have an infinite supply of junior developers living inside their text editor. But, and this is a really big, but adoption does not equal mastery.
Right. Just because you have it installed doesn't mean you know how to drive it.
Exactly. Most people are completely overwhelmed by the options. So to figure out what tool is actually best for you, we have to separate the brains from the bodies.
I really like that distinction because I think people get really confused there. They think the editor itself is the AI.
Yeah, they think Cursor is the AI or Windsurf is the AI.
But the editor is just the interface. It's the body. The brain is the foundational model that is actually running in the background.
Exactly. You can have the slickest interface in the world, but if the model behind it cannot reason, you are just going to get really fast, really confident garbage.
Confident garbage is the worst kind of garbage.
It really is, because it looks right until it breaks production. And right now, the war for the smartest brain is incredibly intense. To judge them, we aren't looking at random Twitter polls or hype. We are looking at SWE Bench verified.
Okay, so I have seen SWE Bench mentioned absolutely everywhere recently. And usually I'm pretty skeptical of benchmarks.
Because they get gamed.
Right, they get gamed. They tend to be these highly sterilized hello world tests, or they ask for a Fibonacci sequence, stuff that does not reflect the messy reality of enterprise software. But Our source material emphasizes that SW Bench Verified is different. Why does this one actually matter?
Because it is messy. It is inherently messy. SWE Bench Verified consists of 500 real GitHub issues. These are not made-up hypothetical problems.
They're real bugs.
Real bugs and real feature requests pulled straight from highly active open-source repositories, things like Scikit, Learn Django Flask, problems that real human developers struggled to fix.
Wow.
So to pass this benchmark, the AI has to do the whole workflow. It has to pull the repository, reproduce the issue, figure out a fix, write the fix, and then pass the newly written tests without breaking any of the existing tests.
So it's like the ultimate SATs, but for fixing legitimate spaghetti code.
Exactly. It tests actual engineering, not just trivia.
All right, so looking at the leaderboard for February 2026, who is sitting at the top, who is the valedictorian?
The undisputed heavyweight champion right now is Claude 4.6 Opus from Anthropic.
Claude takes the crown again.
By a very significant margin. It is resolving between 79% and 80.8% of those real-world issues. But honestly, the raw number isn't even the most important part. It is the kind of work it is capable of doing.
What do you mean by that kind of work?
Claude 4.6 Opus is dominating because of its deep reasoning capability. Specifically, it excels at what they call thinking mode.
Thinking mode. I mean, that sounds a little ominous. But in practice, that means it isn't just predicting the next word like a fancy autocorrect, right? It is actually holding the structural logic in its head.
Correct. When you ask it to do a massive refactor across, say, 20 different files, it doesn't just start spitting out code immediately, it pauses.
It actually waits.
It waits. It builds a mental map of your dependencies. It realizes, oh, wait, if I change this data type in the backend API, I need to also update the front-end type definition, and I have to write a database schema migration.
That is incredible.
That multi-step cross-file reasoning is where the GPT-based models have historically struggled a bit, but Claude 4.6 just absolutely shines there.
And what about the previous version?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are still using it. Is Claude 4.5 obsolete now?
Not at all. Claude 4.5 Opus is still scoring very high. It hits up to 80.9% in some specific runs, but it is noted for being much faster.
Faster, but maybe less deep.
Yeah, it's less contemplative. If 4.6 is the senior architect who strokes their beard for 10 minutes before writing a line of code, 4.5 is the senior dev who just chugs an espresso and types really fast.
I know both of those guys. Okay, so speaking of the other giants in the room, Google and OpenAI, where do they fall on this leaderboard?
They are definitely present, but they have sort of shifted lanes. Google's Gemini 3 Flash and Pro models are sitting around a 75 to 76% resolution rate.
So a little lower.
A little lower, but their play isn't necessarily to be the absolute smartest. Their play is best value. If you are doing massive bulk tasks where you don't need Albert Einstein, you use Gemini. It is very cheap and it has a massive context window.
That makes sense. And what about OpenAI, the company that literally started this whole craze?
It is a bit of a fall from grace, honestly, at least in these specific coding benchmarks. GPT 5.2 and the newer Codex variants are solid. They hover around 72 to 75%.
But they aren't winning.
Right. The source material is pretty blunt about it. They are no longer the absolute king. For complex, nuanced reasoning on large, messy code bases, Claude has simply outpaced them for now.
That is a massive shift in the industry narrative. So if I want the absolute smartest brain for a gnarly refactor, I am plugging my tool into Claude.
Without a doubt.
Okay, so that covers the brains. But I cannot just code directly into a model's API endpoint. I need a body. I need an integrated development environment. And this is where the cult wars seem to be happening online.
Oh, developers are incredibly tribal about their IDEs. They always have been.
Vim versus Emacs all over again.
Exactly. And right now, the entire tribe seems to be flocking to Cursor.
Cursor. It really feels like this tool just ate the software world over the last 18 months. It is fundamentally a fork of VS Code, right? But what makes it different from just taking standard VS Code and installing an AI plugin?
It comes down to deep native integration. When you use a standard plugin in VS Code, the AI is just a guest in your editor. It can only see what you explicitly show it. But in Cursor, the AI is the host. And the killer feature that everyone is obsessed with is called Composer.
Composer. Yes, I have used this. It feels like the standard Command-K feature, but on steroids.
Right. Instead of just generating a little snippet of code in one file, Composer can edit multiple files
Which
simultaneously.
is wild to watch.
It really is. You can literally just type refactor the authentication flow to use OAuth instead of JWT. And it doesn't just give you a markdown list of instructions, it opens the auth service, it opens the user model, the front-end login component, and the config file, and it starts writing the code in all of them at once.
And the sources mention something really interesting about multi-agent parallel processing. What is actually happening under the hood when it does that?
This is where it gets incredibly sci-fi. Cursor can spin up to 8 distinct AI agents working in parallel
8 of them at the same time.
at the same time. So while one agent is rewriting your backend function, another agent is simultaneously updating the unit tests to match that new logic. A third agent is checking for type errors in your TypeScript definitions, and a fourth might be updating the Markdown documentation.
So the whole process is no longer linear.
Exactly. It's fully parallel.
That definitely explains the speed. And then there is plan mode. I have heard so many people say this is the feature that finally stops the AI from breaking their production code.
Yes. Plan mode is absolutely crucial. Before it writes a single line of actual code, it scans your entire repository to build a comprehensive dependency graph. It deeply understands the implications of a change.
Give me an example of that.
So it knows that if you change a variable name in some obscure backend utility, it needs to actively check every single front-end component that imports that utility. It is essentially measured twice, cut once, but executed at machine speed.
The sources describe the feeling of using Cursor as vibe coding, which honestly sounds like total marketing speak, but I kind of get it now. It is that flow state where you aren't fighting the syntax anymore.
You are directing the symphony. You aren't playing the individual instruments, you're the conductor.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
However, that symphony costs money.
It does.
There is a free tier, and there is the standard pro tier, which is $20 a month.
Yeah,
But they recently introduced the ultra tier,
they did.
and that is the one that made me literally choke on my coffee. $200 a month for a text editor. That is a massive ask.
It is a huge psychological hurdle, but you really have to look at what you are buying. You are not buying a text editor.
What am I buying then?
You are buying priority unlimited access to the absolute most expensive inference models in the world, like the heavy reasoning versions of Claude Opus or OpenAI's or one model.
Yeah.
And you get them without restrictive rate limits.
This is an infrastructure cost.
Exactly. Think about it this way. For a freelance developer charging $150 an hour, if that ultra tier saves you 2 hours of debugging a month, it is already paid for itself.
I guess that is the math. It makes sense for a business. But still, $200 is steep for an individual. If I am not ready to mortgage my house for an editor who is the main challenger.
The primary challenger right now is Windsurf.
Great name, by the way.
Very catchy. It is built by a company called Codeum, and they are positioning themselves as the seamless, highly polished, and much more affordable alternative. It is $15 a month for their pro tier, so they are aggressively undercutting Cursor.
Is it just a cheaper clone of Cursor, or does it actually have its own identity?
It definitely has its own identity. It feels different to use. It is incredibly polished. The source material describes it as having a much better general flow.
Okay.
It also has really strong privacy controls out of the box, which heavily appeals to developers who are nervous about sending proprietary code to cloud models. And it has a feature called Cascade.
What does Cascade do?
It works very similarly to Cursor's Composer. It has deep context awareness and does multi-file editing. It is gaining fans incredibly fast because it feels less like a complex power user cockpit and much more like a smooth, intuitive pair programming assistant.
And then there's the elephant in the room, the tool that we all started this journey with, GitHub Copilot. Is it just a dinosaur at this point?
I wouldn't call it a dinosaur at all. I would call it the pragmatist.
Fair enough. I mean,
Yeah.
It is deployed absolutely everywhere.
It is ubiquitous, and for $10 a month, it is the cheapest paid option out there. But the product itself has evolved. It is not just the simple autocomplete we used in 2023. They have Copilot agent mode now.
Right. But how does their agent mode actually compare to the agent inside Cursor?
It is much safer, and by safer, I mean more constrained. Copilot is fantastic at being a helper. It integrates perfectly into the entire GitHub ecosystem. So your pull requests, your issues, your CI/CD pipelines.
But it's missing something.
It lacks that raw, autonomous cowboy energy that Cursor has. It is much less likely to hallucinate a massive broken refactor, but it is also much less capable of executing a brilliant one for you. It is the safe, reliable choice for enterprise companies.
So if Copilot is the reliable corporate sedan, Cursor is the experimental fighter jet.
That is a very accurate way to put it.
Now, we have talked about the brains and we've talked about the bodies, which are the IDEs, but there's a third category that our source material highlights. And this is for the people who think using a computer mouse is a sign of weakness, the delegators, the CLI agents.
The terminal warriors. This is such a fascinating shift in workflow. This entire category is for developers who want to give the AI a high-level goal and just walk away.
And the big name dominating here is Claude Code, right?
Claude Code. It is specifically described in the source as the best pure AI engineer available right now. It does not have a graphical user interface. It lives entirely in your terminal.
So walk me through that workflow, because I am not clicking tab to complete a line of code here. What am I actually doing?
You open your standard terminal and you type a prompt, like Claude analyze the database schema, identify why the user data migration failed, fix the migration script, and run the update. And then you just hit enter.
And it just runs commands, like directly on my local machine.
Again, runs commands, it reads your files, it executes bash scripts. If it sees an error in the output, it actually reads the error, realizes, oh, I missed a node dependency. It installs the dependency on its own and then tries the script again.
That is insane.
It is fully autonomous problem solving. It is completely ideal for massive sweeping repository changes. Like if you need to say update all 500 files in a project to use a brand new date formatting library.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also terrifying.
Yeah.
You are giving an AI execute permissions on your root file system.
Oh, it is definitely terrifying. But the raw productivity gain is totally unmatched for those heavy lifting janitorial tasks. And Claude Code isn't alone in this space either. We absolutely have to talk about Aider.
Aider is the big open source darling right now, isn't it?
Yes. Aider is beloved by the community because it pairs so well with literally any model. You can plug it directly into Gemini, into Claude, or even into local open source Llama models if you want. It is famous for being extremely reliable at chat-based refactoring right in the terminal.
And what about the people who want all this agentic power, but they do not want to pay what people are calling the Claude tax?
Then you need to look at tools like Klein or Continue.dev. These are brilliant open source extensions that basically let you bring your own API key.
So you aren't locked into a subscription.
Exactly. If you have a bunch of cheap API credits with a lesser known provider, or you want to run a completely local model for strict privacy reasons, these are the tools used. They give you that magical agent experience without locking you into a walled garden.
You know, I noticed a name in the brief mention section of our sources that used to be a massive headline, Devin. I vividly remember early 2024 when Devin was announced as the first AI software engineer. Everyone was completely freaking out. What happened to them?
Life moves incredibly fast in this industry. Devin is definitely still around, and it's still very impressive underlying tech. But the source notes that it suffers heavily from being a fully sandboxed environment.
Meaning it doesn't run locally.
Right. It is running on a remote cloud computer. It is not on your local laptop.
So the developer friction is just much higher.
Exactly. You have to sync everything back and forth, and the cost is incredibly high. Tools like Claude Code and Cursor essentially brought that Devin-like autonomy directly to your own local file system for a fraction of the price. Devin just got commoditized faster than anyone expected.
It is a brutal market.
Yeah.
One day you are the inevitable future, and the next day you are a brief mention on page 4. But look, we have really hyped these tools up today. We have talked about 8 agents working in parallel and AI magically fixing bugs at 2 a.m. But the source material also waves some pretty massive red flags. It is not all magic.
No, absolutely not. We are essentially dealing with completely new categories of problems now.
Let's talk about the loop of doom.
Yeah.
Because this sounds like something that would absolutely ruin my entire week.
The loop of doom is a very 2026 specific problem. So imagine this scenario. You give an autonomous agent a relatively simple task. Fix the unit tests.
Okay. Sounds easy.
It changes the code and it runs the test. The test fails, so the AI reads the error output and changes the code again. This time the test passes, but now the main build fails.
Oh, no.
So it tries to fix the build, but in doing so, the unit test fails again.
And it just keeps going back and forth.
It enters an infinite recursive loop of trying to fix its own cascading mess. And here is the real kicker. It is using Claude Opus or an equally expensive high-end model for every single one of those attempts. The source material mentions a real case where a developer went to grab lunch, left their terminal agent running, and came back to a $50 API bill.
$50 for a lunch break.
And the code was still broken.
That is what they call a costly hallucination.
It really is, and it requires a completely new kind of vigilance from developers. You cannot just blindly trust the agent to know when it is time to stop trying.
And that perfectly leads into the other big issue raised in the deep dive, skill atrophy. We have touched on this a bit, but it goes much deeper than just forgetting basic syntax.
It does. The real concern in the industry isn't that we are going to forget how to write a simple for loop. The concern is that we are losing the fundamental mental model of our own complex systems.
Like losing the map of the city.
Exactly. Think about it. If you build a house brick by yourself, you know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. You know where the plumbing is wired, weirdly.
Because you put it there.
Right. But if you just tell the AI, build me a house, and it magically appears on your screen...
You have no idea what's inside the walls.
Exactly. When the roof inevitably starts leaking 3 months later in production, you have absolutely no idea how to find the leak because you didn't lay the pipes. We are seeing senior engineers deeply worried that juniors are becoming prompt engineers rather than system architects.
They can generate massive amounts of code, but they can't actually debug the system.
Because they don't fundamentally understand the underlying complexity of what they just built.
That is a profound risk to the industry. We might be creating a whole generation of developers who are incredibly fast at building things they do not actually understand.
And then they are handing those black box systems over to companies who might have massive security and compliance concerns. There is a huge trust gap right now. Handing your entire proprietary code base to a cloud-based AI agent is totally fine for a lean startup, but for a massive bank or a government defense contractor.
Right. Hey, Claude, please quickly refactor our nuclear launch protocol database. That's probably not happening anytime soon.
Probably not. Air-gapped systems are going to be the last holdouts.
So bringing this all home, let's synthesize this. It is February 2026. I am a listener. I have my credit card ready on my desk. I want to build some software. What is the final verdict from the sources? What is the ultimate combo strategy?
We can break this down clearly into 4 specific user loadouts, depending on what you actually do.
Okay, hit me. What is loadout number 1? Let's say I need maximum productivity. I want to ship new features yesterday, and I honestly do not care about the monthly cost.
Then you want Cursor paired with Claude 4.6 Opus. That is the ultimate shipping fast combo. You use Cursor specifically for that multi-file composer workflow, and you back it with the absolute smartest reasoning brain on the market. It is expensive, but it is the gold standard.
Okay, makes sense. Loadout 2. Let's say I'm doing deep, highly complex work. I'm refactoring terrifying legacy code, or I'm designing a new system architecture. I need a brain, but I don't need a UI vibe.
Then you skip the fancy editor entirely and you go straight to the CLI. You want Claude code, or you want direct terminal access to the Claude 4.x Opus API. You want that raw, unfiltered reasoning power without any UI distractions getting in the way.
Good call. Loadout 3. I am extremely budget-friendly. I am a student, maybe a boot camper, or I'm just very frugal with my subscriptions.
You go directly with Windsurf. It is cheaper, it's highly polished, and it gets the job done. Or, if you are fairly technical, you pair Google's Gemini 3 Flash, which is dirt cheap, with Aider, which is totally free and open source. That specific combo gets you 90% of the capability of the expensive tools for literally pennies on the dollar.
That is a great tip. And finally, loadout 4. The enterprise user. I have a team of 500 developers, and I have a compliance department that actively hates fun.
You stick with GitHub Copilot Agent Mode. It is safe. It is fully integrated into tools you already use. It's only $10 a month, and nobody ever gets fired for buying Microsoft.
That is a very fair point. I do have to push back on you for a second, though, before we wrap. You mentioned earlier in our prep that your personal pick is what you called the senior partner setup, which is Cursor Pro paired with Claude Opus. Why is that? Why pay the premium for Ultra or those high-end models if Windsurf gets you 90% of the way there for cheaper? Is that final 10% really worth the extra $100 to you?
That is a very fair pushback. For me, it purely comes down to managing cognitive load.
Cognitive load?
Yeah. When I use the cheaper models or the slightly less integrated tools, I find myself having to check their work constantly. I feel like I am the tired teacher grading a high school paper.
You're always looking for the typo.
Right. But when I use Claude Opus natively inside Cursor, the reasoning is so consistently strong that I actually start to trust it like I would trust a human colleague. I stop checking for missing semicolons and syntax errors, and I start checking for high-level business logic flaws.
You stop micromanaging.
Exactly. That shift from grading to collaborating is entirely worth the premium to me. It buys me mental energy at the end of the day, not just lines of code.
Buying mental energy. I really like that framing. That is a justification I can probably use with my manager for my next expense report.
Good luck getting that approved.
I'll need it. Before we wrap up this deep dive, though, I want to leave everyone listening with a specific thought from the source material that really stuck with me. We have spent this entire time talking about software tools, but the real implication here is about people.
It always comes back to the people. And the sources raise a deeply provocative question. Are we just automating away all the junior developers, or are we actually just freeing up the senior developers to finally stop doing boring routine pull requests?
It really feels like we are creating an industry where every single human developer is just expected to be a senior system architect on day one.
Right.
Because the AI has permanently filled the role of the junior dev.
Right.
But if the AI is the junior and the AI literally never sleeps, never complains, and it only costs $20 a month?
Then how does a human junior ever get the hands-on experience they actually need to eventually become a senior?
Exactly. If we entirely remove the bottom rung of the career ladder, how does anyone ever learn to climb it?
That is without a doubt the absolute existential question for the next decade of software engineering.
Definitely something for you to think about the next time you let an autonomous agent completely rewrite your code base at 2 in the morning. That is going to do it for this deep dive. Thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck out there with your bugs.
Happy coding, everyone!